This is augforums.com Real Talk, an unfiltered, independent perspective on Acumatica Cloud ERP. My name is Tim Rodman, and I want to mention three things in this pre-recorded intro before we get started. First, thank you to our sponsors. Our first sponsor is Paya. Paya offers Acumatica users a suite of industry-leading payment orchestration tools. Far beyond native Acumatica payments, Paya enables EMV NFC terminals for countersale. They offer a frictionless customer portal through their click-to-pay solution, and they support most e-commerce platforms and point-of-sale solutions used with Acumatica, such as One Retail and AcuPOS. And best of all, omni-channel reconciliation is available for all their solutions. Our second sponsor is DataSelf. DataSelf Analytics is a revolutionary reporting solution that enables organizations to make the most informed decisions faster and easier than ever. It uniquely simplifies business intelligence, empowers anyone to build and access dashboards, and delivers critical business insight when and where you need it. Our third sponsor is Aldrich Web Solutions. Are you a distributor using Acumatica, yet struggling with an e-commerce fit? US-based Aldrich Web Solutions out of Marion, Illinois, has 2 decades of experience helping distributors find success online. Our team of experts built the integration, creating websites that work effortlessly with Acumatica. With our reputation for swift customer service and meticulous attention to detail, we are the perfect fit for distributors needing online solutions. Please take a minute to support this podcast by clicking each one of the sponsor banners located at augforums.com/sponsors. Our sponsors track clicks, and every click helps to support this podcast. The second thing I'd like to mention is that I'm always looking for victims. I mean guests. If you use Acumatica in any capacity, no matter how small, I'd love to talk with you. Check out augforums.com/podcast and click the link near the top of the page to learn more about being a guest on the podcast. Third and finally, I'd love to see you listed on my Rolodex. Check out augforums.com/Rolodex to find out who else is using Acumatica and read the instructions at the top to see how you can add yourself to the list. All right, that's it for the pre-recorded intro. Let's get started. Today is Friday, February 16th, 2024, and this is episode number 126. You can find related links on the episode page at augforums.com/episode 126. Today, I'm talking with Julian Schrenzel about AugJobs, which is our attempt to be part of the solution to help match companies with Acumatica Needs with people who have Acumatica Skills. Julian has been on here before. Julian, thanks for coming back.
Heck yeah, it's good to be back at 126.
Yeah, I don't remember the episode that you were on before, but I'll find that and link to it to the episode page.
Yeah, you've been busy.
Yeah, so, we always like to start off with the brief origin story of all of our guests. I think you've done this before, but we'll go ahead and do it again. Go ahead and tell us where you grew up, where you went to school, and how you landed in the world of mid-market ERP.
Circuitously, I'll tell you that for sure. So I grew up in Seattle, Washington, and I went to school at the University of Arizona, where I majored in vocal performance, music, art. I left there with a bachelor's of music performance, and I lived in New York. I lived around the country, and I began to do recruiting when my father had started this company in 1997, and I was doing shows around the country. And when I wasn't performing in the night times, I was going to the gym and working out, or doing something else during the day. And I decided doing something else would be more interesting than pumping iron all day long. So I started learning how to kind of do the ins and outs of recruiting. I did that, and then eventually I met my wife doing a show, and we moved back to Seattle and got married. And then I joined my father in a more full-time capacity, and from there, that was 2007. Here we are, 15, 7, 8, 9, 10, I'm not great at math. 16 years later, I'm now my father retired at the end of 2019, and I became owner, president, CEO of the company in the first day of 2020, and that's how that happened.
Awesome. I forget if I captured this on the last episode, but I got a previous job of mine back in 2011, I think it was, through your father. So, I've known your company for even probably about 10 years before that. So, I like that you guys have been around the block, and think your somewhat eclectic background is typical of people who land in mid-market ERP. It's a very common circuitous route, as you put it. And
Yeah.
so, I thought you would be a great person to partner with on this AugJobs idea. And we've had some conversation about it, and we've created a page for it, et cetera. And this is kind of our first public discussion about it. And
Mhm.
so, you know, your background aside there, maybe tell us your specific take on what we're trying to do here with AugJobs, and then we can kind of compare notes.
Yeah, I think it's unique and interesting because ever since this mid-market ERP space has been a thing, decades, there's always been a shortage of the talent needed to do the work needing to be done. There's always been some element of hunger by hiring people and an inability to get the people they need exactly when they need them. That has always been a trouble, and it is if not a catastrophe, it's at least a nuisance for everybody at many times in an industry. And so the need has always existed, and to my knowledge, there has never been a moment where an entire industry, an entire channel of ERP partners and all their customers had everybody that they need. They could just have what they need, and they could deliver a good quality product to the people who are asking for it. That has never been a case where there's been a general consensus that, okay, we've got our talent. Yay, it's nut cracked. So the need exists. And despite all the efforts to try to help make that better, and I've seen a lot of different kinds of efforts by publishers, by partners, by recruiting agencies, by anybody, to try to fix that problem. There's always someone out there that's trying to do it and it's making progress here and there, but on a main general basis, it is a nut that is not been cracked. And so I think that the answer to that is not any one organization doing any one thing. I think it is a community based effort that needs to be made, and it needs to have a lot of parties that are in agreement and using and taking advantage and leveraging each other to make benefit happen. And I think this is a really good example with AugJobs, because Aug Forums is a premier place that one would go when they're an Acumatica customer or a partner or anybody in the industry, a professional who has need of information or resources or connections. Generally, Aug Forums, in my opinion, is one of the handful of places that they might go in order to be able to gain resource in one way or the other. And so you are a point where people can go to for that. Whereas a partnership with a company like mine, my company is a mid-market ERP recruiting and staffing firm. So my job is to connect talent with people who need talent and opportunities, people to opportunities. And so if people have an Aug Forums to come to and Aug Jobs to come to and say, hey, I have a need, I have a question, I have a problem, I need a solution to this. And they can come there and be able to get access to someone like Dynexus, who can provide them with the resources they need, be they contract on a project basis or permanent full-time employees that they need to hire, then we have a solution. And us and ourselves, I think, Tim, I don't think we're going to crack the nut in ourselves, but I think this kind of relationship between people with information and people with resource is the right direction, because I think we are creating solution where it didn't otherwise exist in one place. So for me, that's the importance of this union that we have going right now.
Perfect. Yeah, you were making me nervous in the beginning with the grand, like, no one has solved the problem. I thought you were going to go like, we're trying to solve the problem holistically, but I'm glad you wound up in a space where, yeah, I'm on the same page. We're just another piece of the puzzle, doing our part to help be a part of the solution. We know we're not permanent, or you're not the end all be all, right? Um, so yeah, we're just trying to be part of the solution. And I think though that we do. I think we have a somewhat unique focus, but I'm curious to get your take on this. As now, you're the one doing the heavy lifting here, right? We've gone through, worked together on coming up with the page, which I'll link to on this episode. It's just augforums.com/AugJobs. Other than that, though, you're doing the heavy lifting, right? Of connecting people individually. So I'm curious to get your take on this. What I think is somewhat unique, but maybe you've seen it done before,
Mm-hmm.
where we're not focused here on filling like full-time jobs that are going to be needed for years and years. There's a ton of people who do that already. Indeed is a great place, to go do that, post jobs, fill jobs. There's a lot of recruiters who focus on that. What our focus with AugJobs is focused on projects and tasks. They could be short in duration, just a couple of weeks. They could be a few months, but that isn't something I've seen a lot of people do, but maybe you've seen it done. I'm curious your take on that.
I do see usually most recruiting companies that live out there and do work in this space also have a staffing practice. And I'm no different. I do recruiting and I do staffing. Those are kind of like two services that my company provides. It just so happens at this moment through AugJobs that a lot of the need is tending to be on a project basis. That makes sense because people are coming to you, like I said earlier, they're looking to solve a problem. They're not looking to hire a person per se. They may be looking for information from the subject matter experts, and they're looking through your pages. They have a lot of ways they come to you, but they're coming right now that way. So there are, and I will tell you, Tim, that right now, it's baby steps. How do you climb Mount Everest? You do one step at a time. You do your right foot, then you do your left foot, and you repeat that process over and over until you're to the top. In that same way, I think that what we will do with this has a lot of legs. And I think that we're going to do a lot more than just what it looks like right now. Like at the moment, I agree. I think what we are doing now is right. And I don't think we should be trying to boil the ocean. I think that people are coming to be able to get a contractor, a good, solid person who's a subject matter expert to come in and be a pinch hitter, come in and fight that fire and get that fixed and then move on. And that is okay because that is what is needed. But I also would not undersell us, because I think that the people that are coming to you right now for projects, I don't think they're only going to a resume database when they're full-time hiring. They're looking for full-time hires. I think that AugJobs will also be a natural place for people as they get their projects fixed really well and they've run into excellent talent who's doing excellent work for them. There's no reason why they would not come back and say, hey, that really worked well to fix this problem. And now I've got more of those problems with a bunch of clients and I need to hire someone. So maybe I'll go to the same. And I think that that is a realistic next step for someone. And when and if that happens, that's the other side of my practice. And in terms of the heavy lifting of what I do when I work through this partnership with you is, yes, I will serve them as I serve them now on a contract temporary basis. I will also serve them equal quality when finding a full-time permanent resource. So that's what I want to tell you is that yes, baby steps, yes, big mountain, but I would not say that we're not going to get really far.
Perfect. No, it makes sense. Yeah, it makes total sense. And that form we've got on the AugJobs page, that also will likely evolve over time. And as you pointed out to me multiple times as we were kind of working through building the form, I'm more the engineer mindset, and I'm trying to to tweak the gears and get it right. But you pointed out many times that really it's just about matching talent to someone who has a need, and that no form is magic enough to do that, right? And so it's a starting point. It helps make sure that someone who fills out that page, which then you get an email with the information, it just helps to know that this is a person who really has a need and not just some random person who's kicking tires. But at the end of the day, you've got decades of experience listening to the need, and you've also got a bench of consultants, which we'll get into, that you match it to. And so it's a people thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
to your point, there's no restrictions on what kind of need you could fill, right? You're just
Mm-hmm.
matching talent to needs, essentially,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Makes sense. So um, maybe I will go in the direction of the consultant bench. So I'm curious. You said that it's common for a recruiter to have a staffing practice in
Mm-hmm.
addition to filling full time needs. Um, I guess first question I'll ask you is your your contractual relationship with Acumatica, if any.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not a VAR, right? Like what's your legal relationship with Acumatica in this space?
It is non-existent. That's not to say negative. It's not a negative comment, but I will just tell you the fact is I don't have any contractual relationship with the publisher at all. I serve their partners, and I began serving their partners when they came in 2018, when their VP of channel partner enablement came and approached me about starting a program to serve their partners. And in that program, it became a gentleman's agreement, is what it became, that I would provide certain services and I would charge a certain rate. And Acumatica at that time would promote us through certain activities. They would commit to certain activities that would essentially promote our name and our services to their partners. And that is how it all began in 2018. Um, as I said to you, I do not have a contract, so it begs the next step in this story, which I should tell you that I don't have a contract. And what happened there is I spent a couple of years advocating that a contract be created, something on paper that would say, hey, I am offering these services and I am offering this rate for our services. And it is contingent, vitally contingent upon receiving the benefits that I would through the program that Acumatica could provide us. And as long as those people were there, um, I could never achieve getting a physical contract signed by them.
Which
What?
to me is actually a good thing. And of course, I knew the answer, but I'm the same. I'm not a VAR. I've been doing this for a few years now, independent consulting, and I haven't found any downside. I think the main advantage that VARs get is supposedly they'll get leads from Acumatica, although the story I hear a lot is that's not even the case. I think the main advantage a VAR can get is that you can open a support case when you need to report bugs and things like that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
What I work on with reporting, that's rarely ever needed. And when it is needed, I'll record a video showing how to reproduce the issue, which is the hardest part. And then the VAR can take it from there. And I like the phrase you used earlier. We're pinch hitting, right? We're
mm-hmm.
looking to pinch hit here. We're not looking to replace a VAR for anything, right? It's just the
Yeah.
reality is in 2024, it's just not realistic to expect a VAR to be able to do every single thing you need around Acumatica. I don't think
Well,
it is. Now,
well,
there's
what's
some really
also
large
true
ones
is,
maybe, but
Mhm.
we're helping to supplement what a VAR already does, right?
It's true. And in fact, I will tell you that I would venture to say most of the work that I do for end users of Acumatica, for the customers of my customers, assuming I'm serving partners, which I do, the most of the end users have come through personal introductions by their own partner. More of them, more than half, come because of that. And the reason for that is that the partner's interest is going in, implementing the ERP, integrating their solutions to the ERP, and getting them up and go live and getting them successful. That is what their goal is, right? That's what their job is. That's what a partner does. A lot of times, what tends to be is that a customer, which is at the time, oftentimes at the time of introduction, is only a prospect, is only the partner's prospect. They're not yet a customer. So it's very often what I get is when a partner will come to me and say, "Hey, I have a prospect customer, a customer that's signing agreements, but they their processes are their data is messed up. They're trying to do the year end close, or they're trying to get these reports done, and they're just not really able to get to a place where they can commit. Can you go in and help them with a report specialist, with an integration specialist, whatever it is that they need, an accountant who knows Acumatica ERP really well that could kind of set things up? Can you go in and provide them a firefighter to go and fix these problems so that they can have a clear conscience in being able to sign an agreement to allow us to start? And oftentimes that's just the way I can serve, because the partner may not have that resource. They may not have an on-hand accountant who can go in and knows Acumatica, who can work with them before they sign an agreement to work with them. And so very often it serves a very niche need that the partner cannot or doesn't because it's out of scope for them to do. So they, by their invitation, we are often brought in.
Great point there. Yeah, so you're not sneaking around, climbing in the back window of an end user. The partner is inviting you in through the front door. So yeah, I think we're clear here. We're not here to replace a VAR. That's not what we're looking to do with AugJobs. We
Right.
just know that ultimately, at the end of the day, you want someone who's happy, right? And I think we all have. I wouldn't call this the same goal. I mean, I would love to see as many people using Acumatica as possible. I don't know that
Mm,
that's my goal, but I
mm,
would love to see that because I think it's a great product, right? And when you have someone who's happy, they're going to stay on the product for a longer period of time, which ultimately benefits the VAR, right? So we're not in a sense competing here. We're just looking to make the company that's using Acumatica, make them happier. And when that
yeah.
happens, Acumatica wins, the VAR wins, we win, the company wins. That's just the nature of it, right?
Yes. Yeah. A rising tide lifts all boats. I've said that so many times, and I just think that that is a great way to do business in this industry, because it's very easy to do business in such a way that makes winners and losers, especially in my industry of recruiting and staffing. There's a lot of ways that a recruiter can work and make a whole lot of money and hurt people to help others, and then hurt those same people to help other people. They can do that. It's an easy model to do that in. But my dad, when he started doing this work, he worked for a recruiting agency where that would happen, and he hated it. He hated that work. He loved the idea of connecting people, but he hated the model. And so when he ended up starting this company, he went to those people he knew in the recruiting industry and said, "Hey, I'm going to do it this way." And he kind of got laughed out about it. A lot of people said, "Oh, that's silly. You won't be able to do that. Nobody works with recruiters that way." And my dad said, "I don't care. I don't care if nobody does it. They will do it because it's a way better way." And so that kind of thing, that that ideal that was held up as kind of the central point of where he was trying to do with this thing, became the identity of this company. I've never been a recruiter with another company. I've never been a recruiter before, other than with this company that I now own. So I I don't have firsthand experience, but I know exactly how it works because I've been in the industry now for 20, over 15, 16 years. Um, and so I think that when you find a way to rise all tides and not and do no harm, I think that's the answer to a lot of the problems that persist and have persisted forever in this industry.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's, I've known you for a number of years. I mentioned getting a previous job through your dad, and that's why I thought you'd be the perfect person to reach out to with this idea for AugJobs. And at the end of the day, I think it's just having a trusted landing place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe not landing place, but a trusted starting point for
Mm.
someone who has a need.
Mm-hmm.
Because, because we've already discussed, it's not about the form, it's not about the data mining and categorizing all the needs that are out there. It's just about connecting people. And so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what we've started here, right? I mean, this is just
Yeah.
we've got a landing page for it. It's a place you can go to as another option, right? I'm sure every company who has a need pursues multiple ways of filling that need. They
Mm.
ask their employees if they know someone. They ask their VAR if they can do it.
Yeah.
And then they compare the options and they select the best one. So this is just another option for companies to look at when they've got a need around Acumatica.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, I'm curious to talk more then about your bench. So you mentioned that it's common for a recruiter to have a staffing agency as well.
Right.
When you're looking to build skills around Acumatica, I would think that most consultants go and work at a VAR. That's if you're going to do it full time.
Mm-hmm.
How did that come about? Where you build a bench around Acumatica Skills, a bench of people, and without giving away your secret sauce, maybe you could tell us how you do that. Like,
Sure.
and it's a real
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, there's no sauce, no magic bullet or secret sauce. I've been doing this, my company's now 25 years old, and for 25 years, all I do every day and my team has done every day is go out and forge relationships with people who are professional workers and professional hires of said workers. So, by the nature of doing that all day long every day for 25 years, I got a couple of relationships. And because of that, that's what it takes to do the work that I do. You have to be connected. You have to know how to connect people, and you have to build relationships that you can make value with repeatedly. But what happened to start this? It's very important to tell you that, as I said to you, my father retired at the last 12/31/2019. My father retired, right? I bought the checking account, and he gave me the company, and I started February. So now we're going into 2020. 2 months in, February 2020, guess what happened? February, March 2020, COVID, right?
What a way to start.
Oh, it was amazing. So when I took over the company and I had it, we were three employees because my father didn't immediately retire. He did shortly after, but we were three people in the company. And I had 7 clients that were ERP mid-market ERP clients at that moment that were actively engaged in having us fill a role for them. We had 7 active recruitment efforts going on over a period of 2.5 weeks. All 7 of my clients had to immediately freeze their search. So I went from having a strong, for 3 people, that's a good strong business. And also we're always been a retained company, so they were all guaranteed searches. They're not maybe we'll fill them, maybe we won't. Everything we take on, we fill. So we had 7 guaranteed placements, yet they all had to freeze. And I always keep in my contract a contingency for freezing, even though it is a detriment to us. When you're retained, money is time and time is money. And if a company freezes, that means you're not working for that time. So they all did it. They all froze. So I found myself sitting here literally with no money coming in, like nothing, no invoices going out. Yet, of course, bills and payroll and all those things. So I thought, okay, all right. What can I do right now to make this work better, to get through? I said, okay, I know talent, I know hiring people. said hiring people are not hiring anybody because they're frozen. Yet they have customers. Those customers have projects. Those projects have deadlines. And they are going to be calling in those deadlines. So I know they're going to need the talent, but they're not going to hire right now. So I said, okay, I think they're going to use contractors. So I said, I'm going out and I have this huge stable of people who are really good contractors or really good talent who I've always reached out to for permanent full-time roles. I've never went to them about anything less than, hey, I've got a job for you to take for your career. So then I went out to them and said, hey, everybody, you know me as your guy that gets to you about jobs, about career, moves, changes. Are any of you interested in project work? Do you have the skills, abilities to work as an independent contractor where you're not taking on full-time permanent positions, you're taking on opportunities that will be temporary? And I got a lot of response from a lot of people who did that. They were you call them single shingles. They put out their thing. This is what I do. I'm an expert Acumatica report specialist, and I work on a contract basis, hourly rates, and all that. So I said, okay, who are you guys and girls and ladies and gentlemen? And I started to procure a list of the people that said that they were what they were. And then at the same time, I was going out to my customers and prospects and past customers saying, hey, guys, I know you're all not hiring right now. You're all on a freeze, but you have project, right? And you have needs. They need to be filled despite that. Yes, we do. Yes, we would consider using a contractor. So at that point, I had to figure out a way. I did not want to just send them anybody that said they were a contractor because I'd have mediocre talent. And I knew that if I offered someone mediocre talent, they wouldn't have much incentive to ever come back and use me again. So I needed to make sure that I had good people. So I devised ways with partners to be able to try my best to test these people out, to really understand and make sure that whom I was inviting into my stable of workers, only people who are proven to have good people skills, good technical skills, and be trustworthy and be dependable and all of that stuff. And I would take those people and test them the best I can, put them on a project, which would be yet another test of them, put them on, say, an initial small project. And through that process, I got a way to be able to test and vet out people that are the best in the industry. And so I was able to, and then that was what became my roster of talent, which it grows constantly because people come from everywhere. And then as people started to, on this side, begin to understand that I just didn't fill full-time permanent roles, but I was also providing really great people who should do only as much as they need. I started to become a go-to for people who needed that. So the pandemic was the birthplace of that. And as you probably know with everybody in cloud ERP, the pandemic was a turbocharger of business. So what
Yeah,
happened for
it
Dynaxis in
really
that time
was.
is I went from 3 people. We doubled in 2020. We ended 2020 twice as big as we were when I first started the company. 2021 we doubled again, exponential. So a doubling and a quadrupling of the company. So by the end of 2022, we had 4x in size in every way. And so while the pandemic turned out to be a very, very good thing for business, it started out really scary. And it
Yeah,
was the birthplace. It was the birth of our staffing practice. And that's how it all began.
awesome. Yeah, and it makes sense that you had this huge shift to, well, I would say it's almost like a compressed shift to cloud ERP. You knew there was a runway and it would be happening over years, but I think a lot of those decisions got moved up because everyone was working remotely, and working over a VPN with a remote desktop is extremely painful, right? But then, of course, to make that happen, you now have a compressed talent need. And so it makes total sense that you were a part of that. And now I feel like people have just gotten used to it. I mean, you already had Ubers and companies like that pioneering, DoorDash pioneering this type of moonlighting work. And it's all about matching a need to someone who can fulfill that need. And so people are more and more comfortable with that. And then you lay a pandemic on top of that. You lay the remote nature of work that people are more and more used to. And it seems like that's not just a pandemic thing. It seems like it's here to stay. But would you agree with that?
I would think yes. I think that we're never going back to the way we were before 2020 in many, many ways. I think that's true. 100%.
Yeah. And so I guess specifically around the topic of being able to find someone who has a specific skill to help with a specific project. They don't even necessarily on your bench, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they necessarily even have to be a full time independent consultant who has hung the shingle. It could be someone who's working at another company and is just doing extra projects in the evening. Is that correct?
It is true, but I also would say that there is a perceived conflict of interest for many. Like if I have an employee and I'm a partner and my employee is moonlighting serving another partner, on their off hours, I could have a problem with that. Meaning I recognize if other people do. So there are a lot of instances where, like, for instance, someone will say, "Hey, I really want to work for you. I want to be on your roster." And then when we start talking about, okay, well, where are you now? Well, I'm with blah 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 company. I said, okay, do they know? How are they? How is your company employer with you doing that? Well, I wouldn't really. They don't really know. Well, this is probably something we should probably consider. And I do stop the conversation at that point, not to shut it down, but I do want to make sure that if I am utilizing a resource that is working for another partner and there becomes a potential conflict of interest, that I want that to be addressed, right?
That
Because
makes
yes,
sense. Yeah.
we could get away with it for sure. Maybe their partner would never ever know, but but maybe they would. And if they do, I would rather not be caught trying to sneak around the back. This is a great example of how easy it is for a recruiter to make a lot of money and do things that are less scrupulous. It's easy to just accept everybody, regardless of where they are and what their alliances are and what their employers are. But if you do that willy nilly and then everybody starts to see that you're just utilizing a bunch of people behind the backs of their own employers, and even if it's not your job, you're not the one. It's the responsibility of the worker to make sure it's okay with their own employer. It has nothing to do
Sure.
with me. And yet, even so, the optics of it are important. And if you care about your relationships and you care about what you're doing in the industry and you take responsibility for rising the tide that lifts all boats, then you naturally care about that relationship. And even though it's not your direct responsibility, it is something that's important. For me, that is what drives the business that I do, is that I do
That makes
care.
sense. Yeah.
I really actually care more than the money. I care about doing the good thing for this industry to every way that I can.
Yeah, and I apologize. I was not thinking of the VAR situation. I agree. That's extremely sticky because you're already essentially working on an hourly basis for a VAR. I mean, in the sense that you're billing by the hour already. And
Mm-hmm.
then to have a side consulting, that's extremely sticky. But I guess I was more thinking about the situation where someone's working at, in the industry for a company. And, when you work at a company for years and years, things get kind of boring, right? And hey, it's great to have a job and it's nice to have that solid base, but sometimes it's nice to be able to scratch that itch and work on something different and interesting in a
Yes.
moonlighting type of a situation. And I feel like this is all my take, right? And I'm not sure your take on this, so you can respond. But my take is because I've been in this situation, like working in industry for at a company for years, and you're like you start to scratch the itch, and or want to scratch the itch, and you get the grass is greener type of thing going on, and if you only have the option to, okay, I stay doing what I'm doing, or I go change, make a career change, that's like two extremes, right? A lot of times you're happy where you're at. You like the company, you like the people, but you just want some flavor. And I think a moonlighting situation is a great way to scratch the itch, right?
Hmm.
Because one, it helps you realize the grass isn't greener. You might have it pretty good. And so I feel like it helps the company, even if you're working at an Acumatica customer, where you get to do some interesting project, but it helped you scratch the itch, helped you realize the grass isn't greener. You still do interesting projects from time to time, but you're now an employee at that company for a longer period of time. Am I off there? Do you ever see that happen?
No, Tim, I do see that happen. In fact, you have a great example of when you're working for an end user. It's a lot of people who are looking to do more. They are a business analyst for an end user. They really want to be an Acumatica consultant. If they can have an opportunity to do some of that kind of stuff on their own, if they have the skills and they have the resources needed, yeah, I think that is completely within reason. Then I would even go so far as to tell you that I have been approached by partners wanting to put their employees into my stable, that they can have their partners working projects through us. This happened a little bit with some partners who had utilization that was lower. They didn't have the utilization to keep their people on, and rather than bench or let them go, they could drop them on projects through me and be able to get through tough times and keep them keep them without having to completely let them go, because they could put them on stuff. So partners themselves have have put their own employees into service through projects that I've had.
And through the front door. Yeah. So I think
Yeah.
that's a key here. You want to go through the front door, not the back door,
Yeah.
because you care. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
No, so it
exactly.
sounds like, yeah, I wasn't terribly off there. And I know I personally have been in that situation, and I've heard other people be in that situation. You talked and you can just hear it. It's like, oh, I think I want to be an Acumatica consultant full time. And it's like, that's not as green as you think it is. And so, yeah, I like there being this spot in between. And I really think it makes sense because, as you pointed out, Avar's model is to sell Acumatica, implement Acumatica, and then move on to the next one. They're still going to
Mm,
support their client base, but
mm,
their business, it's just the model itself is designed to sell. The way they're compensated from the publisher, which I like to refer to as a pyramid scheme, their margins are contingent upon what they sell that year, and their publishers, every publisher ever, including Acumatica, they're always shrinking those margins year after year. That's why I call it a pyramid scheme. And so that's just the nature of the business model, and has been for decades, right? So
yes.
that's what Avar does. They've got to keep bringing in new clients, but at a customer, you have people who get really deep into certain areas, way deeper than a VAR ever does in that specific industry, right? With that
Mm,
specific module, whatever. And
mm.
I think a lot of times, like a person working at a customer is way more skilled in that specific area than a VAR because of that model. But I don't know if you might be too diplomatic to phrase it that way, but I don't know if you have any response to that.
I think you're absolutely right. There is an analogy I like to think about. You know how, like, when you go to the gym, you've got those people that have like the massive chests and arms in their pigeon legged because they've got that muscle that has been worked, like they've worked the same muscle and then they neglect the other side.
I
In
love
that
that
same way,
analogy.
what you're talking about is just like you said, in any regard, regardless of what ERP it is, in all channel ERP channels where you've got a channel sales model, what invariably happens is, like you said, the partner is compensated primarily by net new licenses sold in any given year, right? The better that a company, that a partner is at selling net new, the more they're going to have benefits from that come from the publisher. And what will happen invariably is you start to create these companies who are super duper good at selling net new stuff, at sales. They're really, really, really get good at demoing and sales, and they can win that customer. But when you put all of your resources into the sales funnel, into the front end of your business, what resources are left to devote to the delivery? Great delivery is every bit as important as the sales if you're going for a sustainable model that is sustainable and scalable. If you're going for the near term profit and the near term benefit of it, beefing up that sales. You get a lot of net new licenses. You're going to have a lot of leads. You're going to have a lot of commissions. You're going to do a lot of stuff like that. But if you are not satisfying your clients on the back end, especially in the cloud ERP space, where it's important to win the customer, but it is every bit as important to keep the customer, because your managed services model, where you have a subscription instead of the time and materials and selling of the licenses, now you have to earn that money back. And so year 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, if you don't have a customer that is just as happy as they were at the beginning, you're not making that residual. And guess who is? Someone else, because they're going to move when you can't deliver as you've promised. And so this is, again, agnostic to the ERP. It's with every ERP you can think of. But
Yep.
Honestly, it is a major contributor to customers, end user customers, who do come looking for my services independent of a partner. I get people coming all the time, seeing my website or getting in touch because they know someone who knows me or knows my company. And they come in frustrated because they are getting dragged through the mud, because there's either that their partner is unable or unwilling, or just lacks the resource or the knowledge or whatever have you to solve a problem, a complex business problem. And it's part of the model. And I think it is something that is very important to address and fix. And I don't know what that fix is, but it exists.
Quick time check. That's resonating with me a lot, but quick time check. Are you able to go another 10, 15 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So yeah, that's totally resonating with me. And, to your point about the model, yeah, it's just the model. It's not an Acumatica thing. It's every ERP publisher, and we're not throwing rocks at it. I mean, we're not like, with every model, there are pros and cons, right? It's just a matter of understanding the model and knowing the pros and the cons of that model. And so, with that, what I like to call pyramid scheme model, it's just, it's just the way it works, right? And so it's not that VARs are bad. It's not that publishers are bad. No. I don't think that at all. Yeah, every model has its pros and cons, right? And we just had Acumatica Summit a couple weeks ago. And if you look at all the awards that Acumatica hands out, they're all sales related, right? That's all about net new business. And that's just the model. That's what they have to do to grow as a company. That's the way business works, right? But understanding that model, you just understand then why sometimes as an end user, you're like, oh, my VAR's just not paying enough attention to me. And I've had this conversation over and over and over, being in an independent capacity. Many times I just jump on something for a few hours, or even I just do everything hourly. So I'll jump on an hour phone call, I do everything prepaid. So you pay me for the hour, then I jump on the call just to give another perspective a lot of times. So I've had this conversation a lot of times. And what I tell people over and over again, and it's honest, is that, you might have a better experience changing VARs, but not necessarily, because that's the model. And especially the last few years, like, everyone is busy with Acumatica. It's been very popular, but that also means everyone's busy. So yeah, maybe your VAR is not as responsive as you want them to be, but I think, as far as I can see from my perspective, that's the case with everyone right now, right? And so
Yeah,
having, go ahead.
one of the things, Tim, that reminds me of is like, I read a Gartner study recently, and I didn't know the number was this high, but according to the study, it said that up to 75% of ERP implementations fail to some degree, to some major metric. Not like utterly and completely like wipe out on the side of the road kind of thing, but to some major metric, some core core requirement of success does not meet the mark on up to 75% of net new ERP implementations. And that to me is a massive number, because I know what the cost is of a failed implementation to a customer. And one of the things that I promote and I think is not something that I don't see promoted very much, but I think it's very important, is the selection process for a customer when they are selecting an ERP, to be able to not only the selection process, but the process from selection all the way to the go live of the ERP. When they have the partner and the partner's implemented and trained the customer and they're all ready to actually go live, is to have a person, third party, ERP professional, business analyst professional, who knows the product that they chose, a third party entirely outside of the partnership and customer relationship, who can be there to be an advocate for the customer, third party advocate, and pay that person a good price. I think I see with 75% failure rate on ERP, it is the best investment that a end user will ever make in their business process improvements of implementing ERP. Is it hiring an external third party person to watch and to advocate?
Great. I'm glad you brought up that scenario. And it's another pinch hitting scenario, right? You're not replacing anyone there. You're just providing another perspective. And, if you're about to go have surgery, major surgery, you probably want to get a second and third opinion, right? It's a big decision. It could kill you. Same thing with an ERP implementation. And I think it's funny you bring up a Gardner survey. I've seen, these surveys for decades, and they're consistently at least over 50%. And, I just kind of shrug at them. It's like, I just think it's always going to be that way. To me, I think it's human nature. I think it's part of the grass is greener part of human nature.
Mm,
The same reason that people think changing jobs will be so much better. They think that changing ERPs will be so much better, and they don't realize it's actually a cultural problem at their company or whatever,
mm,
right? It's just so easy to change jobs or change the software when reality it's more complex than that, right? So I don't feel like that number will ever change. I think it's just a human nature thing. And, how do you define the failure, right? You can, it just didn't live up to expectations. And the truth is you just had too high of expectations, but it's still, in the end, especially you give it enough years, it still, I think most of the time winds up being a good decision. Um,
yeah.
so anyways, you're totally resonating with me though, on a number of fronts there.
But I think I see why, like, for instance, you feel so strongly about Acumatica. The product is superior to most that is out there. And having a product that is just a high quality product, like, you could have the best team in the world doing the best work in the world, but if your product is limited, you will never have anything better than what the product can deliver. And it's the same thing around. If you have a great product, but you're the team that is implementing and the team that is making that work for you, it's only going to be as good as the weakest link in the whole thing. How good the product is, how good the team is. So having a good product, at least that eliminates the possibility of it being the product that's the problem. Um, and so I think there is something to be said for the quality of the product pertaining specifically in this industry of Acumatica.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and I think most of the time for the failures, it's not has nothing to do with the product, right? If you go dig into those studies, most of the time it's not because of some bug or some specific missing feature. But yeah, I do like the Acumatica product, and I like the community, etc. You just kind of have to. These ERP systems are so complicated. You have to pick one and skill up on it. It's just hard to have too many in your pocket, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
think both of us we like the Acumatica community, the product, and we're just looking to help fill needs here. And so if anyone has a need, they can go out to augforums.com/AugJobs, AUGJOBS. It'll be on the episode page. Just if they fill out that form, that'll go over to your team, and you can start working on helping them to fill that need. Also, and I should say, I asked you about your history on this, but my history on why I wanted to do this. I talked about why I reached out to you because I known you for decades and you're a do the right thing kind of person. But, on my side, why I was interested is I was tired of responding to LinkedIn messages and emails with like, sorry, my plate is full right now. I'm just one person. I'm not building a practice. And so it's just nice now that I have something else to point people to, because I can't do it all myself. And so, it's the same. It pairs very well with my approach, which is independent. I have no contractual relationship with Acumatica, just like you, and not replacing a VAR, pinch hitting, etc. But it pairs well because people who are reaching out to me are looking for that, I find. And so now you're just my bench for that. And I'm the same as you. I want to help people solve their problems, even if I can't do it personally. So
Hmm.
I think this makes a lot of sense. And this
Hmm.
podcast episode is our first like in-depth discussion about what we're doing with this. We've already had some activity on it. It's fairly new, but we've both been around for a while, and I think that this will gain traction. And it just makes sense, right? Or help
Yeah.
people solve their problems.
Yes. I don't know, Tim, if you would want to include this in the conversation, but I will say it here, and you can edit out or not. That when
I probably won't. Most of the time, I don't. So yeah, go ahead.
okay. When once the form comes through of someone who's looking for opportunity, I will very often when I respond to them, I'll give them. We have on my website, I have a tool that allows them to search my roster. It's all people's names or codes instead of names. So everything is kind of behind that, but they're all there and all the information is there. And most of the resumes are even there that are in blinded format. But people can go out to my website, which is dynexusgroup.com/staffing, and they can click on the
I'll put
button.
that link in the episode page. Go ahead.
Okay. And they can click on the button that says, what does it say nowadays? They can click on the button at the very top that says find your ERP contractor. And it takes them down to something that feels a little bit like Airbnb. Like they have a bunch of search bars that they can search by the ERP experience. Like what kind of ERP do they have? What role do they fill, be it a developer or a business analyst or a report specialist or an implementation specialist or an accountant, by what industry, be it manufacturing or distribution or construction or whatever, and then where are they, and what module set they have experience with, how much experience they have. They can do all of the filtering down, and the results show up in real time directly below that in a list format and in a geography format, so they can see them where they are and choose to drill down by geography or just drill down by looking at the profiles that they see on the left hand side. But that's where I direct a lot of people because most everybody I have is there, and I will proactively understand what their needs are and go find people and suggest them. But they also can look and find them on their own. And once they find them, they just hit the form thing, and it sends me a note that says I want to interview this person, and we go right into interviewing.
Perfect. Yeah, I will put a link to that. And some people want to try to fill their own need that way, and I love that transparency that you have that. And I think some people there are like, something's on fire and I just need it fixed, and so that's where you probably provide a little more one-on-one to do that matching for them, right?
Yeah, I do. Even if they select their own people, I still will match it myself because I know my roster better than anybody. And if I know what their needs are, and I could say, hey, yeah, they chose this person, but they also should look at these two. And then I'll just set them up. I'll coordinate interviews and get them all set up to talk. There's no commitment they have until they choose their person and they start working. That's the first time there's a commitment. So it's all without any kind of cost to them to do that.
Perfect. You had a couple other things. So contractually, if someone goes through AugJobs and is like, yeah, this seems like a good way to fill my need. Well, first off, I will also point out, we're in the transparency section of our episode now. I'll point out that I'm personally, for anyone who goes through AugJobs, I'm kind of being that second perspective. Like, how did it go? Like, was it a good? It's like keeping Dynexus honest. Was it a good experience for you, right? So I'll be transparent there. But then also, for someone who comes through AugJobs or goes through your staffing stable, as you call it, is it a did they do a contract with Dynexus or do they do a contract just directly with the consultant?
It is both. I have a process I take them through, and I have contracts that are ready to go. So, essentially, in a very basic nutshell, at a point where they're eventually going to want to interview a candidate or more than one candidate, I have a contract that they look at. It's like a single page, and it says, "Hey, I'm about to look at a candidate that's coming through Dynexus. If I hire them, I'll go through the program. I wouldn't go around it." And then they sign that, and then after that, the next thing is like an NDA, a master services agreement with an addendum that's kind of an NDA and stuff. And then so once they choose the person that they want to actually hire, that second contract is a few pages long, and it essentially just solidifies, I'm doing this. This is the arrangement. This is the person, and that kind of just, so the contract is a two-step process, and it's with Dynexus and the contractor themselves.
And then from a billing perspective, on the providing services side, who's the throat to choke? So, let's say the consultant does a disastrous job. Who's the contract with from a billing and services perspective?
The contract. So the company that is the customer has an NDA. They will have an NDA that is signed mutually with the contractor themselves. The contractors are 1099 contractors. They have, most of my contractors have their own company that is themselves and a couple others. So there's always a company that they are engaging with, and they have an NDA that will protect them through that direct relationship between the contractor and the customer themselves.
So of course I knew this. I wanted to fill out these details. So, then the next thing is we've already had a few people kind of be interested in joining your stable. So it's important for you to know you would not be an employee of Dynexus. You wouldn't have, Dynexus insurance company covering your completely disastrous taking down an Acumatica database or something like that. You would be a 1099. So you should form your own LLC to do that, because it would be, legally you're essentially, from a services perspective, you're contracting directly with a company. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it would. I take great pains to make sure that the people that are in this roster that would not happen. I think that it's impossible to I would never promise you that this will never happen ever kind of thing. But I go through great pains to make sure that anybody that is available on my roster has been deeply vetted, and has been tested. And so and in addition to that, I ensure that there is a contract that is a binding contract that includes an NDA, that includes the protections that you need in order to do that, in order to have that done right. So, yes.
Yeah, you're like a coach. You're like a consultant coach, I'm just getting the scary legal stuff out of the way. I think the reality is, you're matching people to problems and helping companies solve problems, and the chance of something blowing up is extremely low, in my opinion. I haven't really seen that happen, but it does happen. So it's good to be aware of the legal side of things. And you're like a consultant coach, I think, in that you're helping someone to get started as a moonlighting independent consultant, or full-time for that matter. And
Yeah.
so we've already had a few people do this, but if someone wants to reach out to join your bench, they can reach out to you directly, or they can reach out to me. Send us an email. I'll put our emails on the related links of this episode, noting that now.
Great, Tim. Yeah.
And so I think we've got a good start to this thing. Anything else we wanted to cover that I forgot about?
I feel like we did massive swaths of covering things. I think we did a great job.
Yeah, I go deep on this podcast. Most people don't listen to the whole thing, but at least we put our intentions out there publicly. I think we've been pretty transparent about it, and just anyone who wants to know more about AugJobs can listen to this. So thanks for taking the time to have this conversation.
Thank you, Tim. It's been a pleasure, man.
All right. Well, that's it for now. We'll catch you on the next episode of augforums.com Real Talk. Thanks for listening, and take care.